Hey guys, it's Anfield here. Welcome to a new video, and it's going to be a video that's sort of a follow-up on the artillery video I did recently. And it's not on artillery, but it's on the same sort of topic of the game in general and what can be improved about it. So I'm going to rename that other video, I guess, and sort of make a series out of this. Again, not just about artillery, although I will probably revisit that topic because there's a lot of things I want to clarify and people with huge assumptions and misunderstandings and things that I want to fix. But regardless, this is going to be basically things that I think could be improved about World of Tanks. And yeah, so the topic I want to talk about for this video is going to be about gold rounds, which is something again that's sort of hotly debated and things like that. So I want to shed some light on the issue, what I think about gold rounds and other things like that. So a lot of you that commented on the artillery video seem to assume that I want artillery removed so I can own with my gold rounds, which is an interesting accusation, I guess. Let me make something clear. I don't know where you got this idea from, but I don't remember ever stating or saying that I was ever completely okay with the gold rounds. In fact, it's a discussion that comes up on my stream a lot, and I'm not 100% okay with how gold currently functions in the game. And so basically, I just want to talk about that, and hopefully some of you will understand that just because I don't like artillery doesn't mean I'm automatically okay with a bunch of other aspects of the game, which is why I'm going to make this little series here to point out some things that I think could maybe be improved about the game. And just before we get into it, one more thing to clarify. Just because we're having a discussion on an aspect of the game and debating it and other things like that, does not automatically make it whining. In the artillery video, a lot of you, before you even said anything, would just be like, oh, this is whining, whining, whining. And it wasn't. It was just a discussion. Yeah, I don't like artillery, but it's just a discussion on the fact that wargaming are changing artillery. And this is why I think it should be changed, and also, my opinion on what maybe would be a good solution to be changed about artillery. So yeah, it's not whining. I mean, I don't know if I mean, the whole thing about whining, I really don't get. I mean, maybe you just want a dictator to rule over your life, and you don't want political parties and vote for things like that and have your choice and debate about what can make the world a better place. But hey, I don't know. Anyways, let's get into gold rounds. So the term gold rounds originates from the fact that you used to only ever be able to shoot or purchase gold ammunition via gold itself, which is the in-game currency opposite to credits that can be either obtained by purchasing it for real life money, which is where wargaming obviously makes its money, or by I don't know, receiving it from events or clan war map or tournaments or other things like that. So it meant that most of the time in pub matches, you didn't really see gold that often, and only some people had like a couple rounds on their tank. Some people had a lot of gold rounds because they had deep pockets, I guess. But most of the time, it wasn't something you'd actually see that much in pub matches. Now, on the Clan War map, it was considered that you needed to fire gold at least at the top level, and so most of that gold earned off the map was often put back into reimbursing members for their use of gold rounds. So even then, that's the only time we really saw gold ammunition used that much. This meant that the majority of the population, such as even myself, were not using gold in pubs, and that was okay. It was a little unfair, though, that some people did have access to this round basically whenever they needed it because they could afford to do so. And that was pretty unbalanced, and basically that was pay to win. Now, Wargaming began to move their model from pay to win to a pay for convenience structure, which is what premium counts and premium tanks for. You don't automatically get better or have an advantage in the game because you can spend gold now. But there is a time and convenience factor associated with it. So gold was eventually updated so that you could pay for it with credits. And this also goes with consumables as well, but we're strictly talking about gold rounds. So you can now purchase gold rounds for your credits, which is great because that's not pay to win. So this led to far more gold being fired in pubs than ever before. And this is a problem because a lot of tanks that previously were basically considered very heavily armored and well-armored tanks suddenly their armor was far less effective because it was just being defeated by um, gold ammunition. Now, to be fair, gold isn't always the end all be all. It's not an auto pen round, and also, sometimes it's not better to fire the gold round over your standard ammunition. At least nowadays. Now, it used to be that, if your tank had heat as its second round, let's just use the 57 as an example. When the 57 came out, those that, cared enough and, were happy to spend all that money would fire basically only heat out of the T57. And it was strong because heat hadn't been altered back then, and it would pen everything. This was an issue, and it was eventually fixed. Heat now is very easily defeated by spaced armor and other things like that. So maybe in a lot of cases AP is the better round. But in that specific situation for a time, there was no better round to fire than heat. So an interesting situation with how gold currently works is that some tanks both received a huge buff and a huge nerf when gold was first introduced for credits, and it gave access to everyone. A tank that no better exemplifies this is the E100. The change was both a blessing and a curse for the E100. The E100 has horrific standard round penetration. It's 235, I believe, and that is just far too low in a tier 10 match. Most tier 10s that aren't completely paper, which is some, but not most, will always pretty much be very safe against an E100 standard round. And this is something that could easily be fixed by Wargame just introducing a higher level of pen for the standard AP, just like 250 or something. But they haven't, and so 235 means that most people will, including myself, fire heat out of the E100 because otherwise the tank is just far less effective, and you're really gimping yourself and your teammates if you fire mostly AP. The other side of this is the fact that since most people now have access to gold ammunition, heat is a huge problem for the E100 because the turret is basically mostly flat. It's a little bit angled, but it's basically just easy time. While AP will often bounce, especially if you angle it, heat will actually most reliably, or most of the time, reliably go through the turret cheeks on the E100. So basically, a huge part of its armor has become redundant. Even side scraping in the E100 becomes another issue. And it's not just tanks like the E100, that's a more older example, but there are tanks such as, say, the 183, which are entirely based around their gold round, in this case, Hesh. It's a highly broken round, but it is a more unique gold round as well, and if you fire AP out of the 183, it's just basically a weak JP100. There's very little point to ever firing AP. There are very few scenarios where you would ever consider firing AP over Hesh. But there you have it. You have a tank that's basically entirely balanced around the gold round. So in the case of the E100, it's easy to fix. If you're going to do something gold, you can just boost the AP penetration, which I don't know why they haven't, of the E100. Just say something more reasonable, like 250, I don't know. Put the 183, it's a little bit more difficult because you do something about that Hesh round to make it less broken, and suddenly you've got a very useless tank. So it's difficult in that perspective with some tanks to balance gold rounds. So I talked a little bit about some of the more practical issues, such as making armor redundant. And a lot of tanks, and armor is sometimes the best feature on a tank, and when that's made completely pointless, such as on the mouse or things like that, you see a real issue with gold. But gold isn't as much of a problem as a lot of people seem to make it out to be. And this is really interesting to me because when I play, I play both the NA and the EU servers, and they're very different for a lot of reasons. But what I find most fascinating is when you're playing on the North American server, and those of you that play a North American server will know this, the most common thing you'll probably see when someone dies or is, completely outplayed or something like that, the excuse they come up with to why they died is, oh, you're hacking noob or something, Warpack user, whatever. And you do see the other excuses as well, the common ones. But hacking and things like that, I don't know why people still think you can hack this game. I really don't. There are broken mods, to be sure, but no mod's so broken that it would actually make a real difference. But anyway, it's interesting that people always need a scapegoat for the lack of ability. And in this case is something that doesn't even exist, like hacking. It just is unreal. Now on the EU server, what I notice is when I play on EU, I don't remember ever playing a game where someone hasn't complained about gold rounds or called someone a gold noob or something in Polish. I assume is an insult. Something something gold something something. And what's interesting is that on the EU server, it's gold that is the typical scapegoat. Oh, you use gold, so blah 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 blah. So I guess I need to make something clear. With gold rounds, gold isn't going to automatically make you a super unicum if you're a red player or whatever. Gold doesn't make that much of a difference. It does make a small difference, and you will notice probably a small increase in damage per game if you use a lot more gold when you're typically using AP. But it's not going to solve other fundamental issues with your own gameplay. But people get obsessive about it. Like, it's really not that big of a deal, guys. I mean, I don't, I'm going to discuss soon what I think gold should be changed to, because I don't think it's fair as it currently is. But on the other side of that, it's not as big of a deal, and it's not going to make you some superstar player just because you're firing gold all of a sudden. That's not how it's going to work. So specifically talking about those that accuse others of firing gold and things like that. Why is this something that people get so concerned about, so angry, and it's something that I've thought about a little bit, and I guess I've already sort of mentioned it, where if you get outplayed by someone, it's easy to accuse them of firing gold. And I guess with the mods in the game now, a lot of people have the mod that tells you what kind of rounds you're being fired at. So if you're getting hit by a gold round, it's like, oh, that person's beating me because of gold. And it's interesting because I guess on one sense, you're always going to want to blame something for the reason that you died, rather than congratulating the other player on outplaying you. But on the other side of that, I kind of think about why people must hate gold so much, and I think a lot of it is just because a lot of people can't afford to shoot gold. Yes, you can buy it for credits, but it's expensive, and unless you're outputting a lot of damage in games, you're not gonna actually cover the cost of gold. For example, most people won't do more than, or can't even get to 2,000 average damage in their tier 10s. And if you're doing that, even with a premium account, you're not going to make money if you're firing gold. So you basically can't afford it. So you hate what the other person can do. Now, some cases, people will fire gold that are not good players, but because they spend a ton of money on credit packages, they can afford it, I guess. Or they play a lot of premium tanks. But for top players, we offset that cost or still make money while firing gold. And I think, when you see so many unicums will shoot gold, I mean, there are some unicums that will shoot gold regardless, and I don't agree with that. But most, such as myself, that will fire gold when we need it, when we think we need it. And sometimes, yes, we have a gold round loaded for a tank we think we're going to shoot, and then another tank rolls by that happens to be a little light tank, and he gets shot instead, and then he whines about it like, oh, you loaded it for me. Well, no, I didn't load it for you. But anyway, the point is, use gold when you need it, not all the time. And we can afford to do that. I can afford to fire gold and still make money. And most people can't do that, and I think that's when people see unicums firing gold, they think, oh, you're only a unicum because you fire gold. And, 99% of the time, that's really not true. For example, I played on EU recently, and I was playing a brand new TL-10E5. I hadn't had any games in it, and I loaded it up. I want to see how much damage I could get. I loaded it up with a certain amount of AP and a certain amount of heat, and I think 1 HE. And I had a premium repair kit, a premium med kit, and rations, which means basically if I have to use either the repair kit or med kit, I'm guaranteed to spend 20,000 on one of them, or 40,000 if I use both. But I'm also guaranteed every battle to spend 20,000 on the rations, the cola that I put on the E5. Now, I played quite a lot of battles in it, and my average damage was 4,300, right? And I made 90,000 credits, or 94,000 credits over the session, which is an average credit of 3,000 or so per game, which isn't a lot, but it's still positive credit income, despite firing some heat when I needed it, and also using all those premium consumables. If I didn't use the premium consumables, I would actually have made a lot of money despite firing heat. So I think that's where some of the issue comes from. People can't afford to fire it, and it becomes, oh, screw you for being able to afford to fire it, I guess. On another video of mine, where I third marked my T62A, one of the comments, I mean, most of the comments were like, oh, good gameplay, etc., whatever. But one or two comments were, oh, not hard with full gold. Well, first, I didn't fire full gold. I had a mix of APCR and heat. But that's another thing that kind of backs us up. When I see people that, comment like that, oh, well, you're just firing all gold, so it's easy. It's really, it doesn't suddenly, you can't 3-mark a tank just because you're firing all heat. In fact, if you think you can, go ahead and go for it. If you think you can go from sub 2k damage gain to 4k just because you're firing heat, by all means, show me the results and prove me completely wrong. I'll be happy to see this. So that was a little bit more of one of the controversial parts of this. A lot of people will probably get mad about the stuff I said there, but there's no nice way to put it. I can't put it any other way. I see the gold noob comments all the time, etc., and it is so dumb. But now getting to the important part of the subject at hand and what should be done about gold rounds. So the two solutions I want to talk about that I like the most are, one is something that you've probably already heard of, and that's limiting the capacity of your tank in terms of how many gold rounds it can carry. Let's say your tank carries 40 rounds in total. 10 of those can be gold, just for this example. In which case you would have like 30 AP or APCR, and then 10 APCR heat rounds as your gold. This is I think effective solution in many ways. Although I still think more of the mechanic needs to be changed. So for the next solution, basically I want to talk about is a change of the gold round itself, and this is something more comprehensive and probably more difficult for wargaming to implement than a standard. You can carry 5%, 10% of your rounds be gold rounds. In this case, it would be you take the round themselves and you actually keep the penetration at the level that they currently are, and then alter the round to have lower damage. This would mean that gold rounds basically they have a greater chance to penetrate your enemy, but in the trade-off for that higher pen, you receive less damage. Now, I don't know the exact amounts. Let's say you have an E100 round that hits 750 AP, and you need to use the heat to penetrate an enemy. Let's say, I don't know, 650 or something, or 600, I don't know. You lose a bit of your damage for the trade-off of the higher pen. This would mean that armored tanks that need to be penned by gold at least aren't being punished for the same amount of damage they would otherwise be shot at for if someone needs to use gold. I think this is a more interesting solution. I do think it's more difficult and far more complex. But I think it would add more skill into the game, because then people would value shooting weak points more, because you really want that full damage. But you need to know that situation where it's way too unreliable to use your standard round. You're gonna have to sacrifice some damage and switch to a gold round. In this situation too, you could lower the cost of the gold round because they're no longer vastly superior. They're no longer superior. And I think that would be an interesting solution. But either way, these are the two that I've sort of come up with, or been proposed. And, it's interesting. If you've got something else, let me know in the comments. Some of you may have something either more interesting. I know in the artillery video, some of you suggested some actually really incredible things about artillery that I hadn't even thought of, and I really like some of the ideas that you guys came up with. Those of you that actually wanted to participate in the comments and not just basically blanketed as whining. So yeah, let me know what you thought. If you got really offended by the video, I'm sorry. I just tried to say it how it is. I'm not very politically correct, so I'm not very good at being super nice about things. I just say them how I think they are. And that's fine if you want to do the same in the comments. So yeah, thanks for watching, and let me know.